So, the hero journey is a spiritual quest. We're using this word spirituality not exactly to mean religion, but to mean what that bigger issue is that religion is addressing. Religion ends up addressing it all about belonging to a club, having certain rituals, and believing certain things, and having friends that you're friends with that other people aren't friends with, maybe having the right enemies, all of that is religion. But behind all of that, for everybody, there is this quest to understand your life, to have a spiritual life, in the sense of how you talk to yourself and understand who you are and what you're doing here. Well, so the hero journey involves a transformation of self. Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tale of the ugly duckling is an allegory about growing up gay. Maybe Andersen himself even knew and intended that. It's a very popular story and applies to lots of children's growing up and finding their body changing. But it has specific meanings for queer people because it's about being different from your own family. It was interesting when I went looking for these images to illustrate the talk. I came up with, when you look up the ugly duckling, there are literally thousands of hits. All these books, all these images that have been made. This is this incredibly popular story. One of the basic, the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales. But it's, when you read it from our point of view, it's so specifically about us. Of the duckling, or the cygnet, that is raised among the ducks, feeling ashamed and outcast. He has to discover his true identity, and when he does, he is transformed into a swan. The gay hero journey is always about transformation and finding that true self. We have to learn to see our worlds differently from how we were taught. We have to understand sexuality differently. We have to perceive and value our body parts, especially our private parts, differently. Being gay, no matter how you do it, involves unlearning a lot of the lessons of toilet training. There's a whole thing about cleanliness and hygiene. We have to learn. We've got our own rules of hygiene now with AIDS. But the gay stuff involves an anality, which is not allowed. You're not supposed to put things in your mouth. And this whole thing that we have to relearn. We have to transform, and we have to transform what we think homosexuality is, because what they tell us it is not what we discover. We have to learn to create something from nothing. We have to change how we see ourselves. Much of the transformation is about self and self-concept. So changing how you see things and showing other people how to see things differently is a creative power and a task of the gay hero. Interesting that so many of us end up artists, and artists, the goal in art is to show people how to see something differently. You make a painting of it, or you make something like this, and now seeing that, you understand that you can look at all dish rags or whatever that is differently. It implies beauty where you wouldn't have seen beauty by framing it. This is a skill that gay men particularly have. Well, another step is taking or receiving your true name. Transformation is signified by changing one's name. That's why monks and nuns take religious names, and radical fairies take fairy names. And indeed, why traditionally women took their husbands' names, to signify change. So here's Harry Hay. Notice this is at a 1987 gathering at Wolf Creek. He's queering the communist hammer and sickle. So he's got a hammer in his hand. This picture was taken by Mark Thompson, and Mark did a lot of photography. That's one of the odd roles that we don't really know about so much. But let me take a moment to honor Mark and Malcolm. They both Mark died in the summer of this year. Malcolm died about a year ago. Through what he published in The Advocate as cultural editor, and which was then published in the book Gay Spirit, Myth and Meaning, Mark can rightly be thought of as the founder of gay spirituality. You know, so much of what he does in the book Gay Spirit, Myth, and Meaning is to show these links back in history to Edward Carpenter and Walt Whitman, you know, showing that there is an historical depth to this. It's not just sex in the present world, which is how it gets portrayed so much in, you know, in the popular imagination of what it is to be gay. This name changing is also what the political signifiers are about. Choosing to identify as homosexual or homophile or gay or LGBT or as queer or trans or bi, as a rainbow child or proud but unlabeled, all are ways of expressing self-discovery and change. Each of these terms, you can see, represent generational and cultural changes in how sexual and gender variance is understood. Knowledge at each stage makes possible and expands knowledge at the next stage. Knowledge of homosexuality made possible gay identity. Gay consciousness made possible the awareness of trans consciousness. Layers of identity multiply. Transformation itself results in a self-fulfilling prophecy of more transformations. So we end up with these long alphabetical, the alphabet soup of identity. In a way parallel to what Lloyd Meeker calls shape-shifting, in the individual sex and gender variant person, the reality and the terminology of LGBTQIA+ shape-shifts through time. This parallels the Foucaultian queer theory idea that sexual identities are constructed rather than essential. You know, one of the big debates and the arguments is whether there really is such a thing as homosexuality, whether you're an essentialist or a constructionist. They really are describing sort of the same thing. And I say I don't think these ideas have to be competitive or that they are complementary. Heroes change their names or get new names as part of the stage of initiation, and their world changes. So, discovering a new world. One of the, I want to talk specifically about Harry Hay's idea of subject-subject consciousness. Is this a familiar idea? You've heard of this? Harry Hay, up there in the pink pants, was the founder of the original Madigan Society, and then much later the Radical Fairies, and an important voice in gay consciousness. He said that a major strength of homosexual experience is that we relate to other same-sex people as subjects like oneself. We can understand each other in a way most straight people just don't. We share a secret understanding. We certainly understand each other at the level of sexuality and desire. Hay used the terms subject-subject and subject-object. He said most heterosexuals treat each other as objects. These parallel the terms created by the Jewish existentialist philosopher Martin Buber, I, thou, and I, it. These were popular terms at the time when Hay was writing and founding the Madigan Society for describing authentic, compassionate, understanding, respectful relationships. Relationships of equal to equal, I to thou. Hay was intentionally contrasting homosexual and heterosexual relationships, wanting to give special dignity and respect to the homosexual at a time when homosexuals were not believed to be able to have relationships at all. Another way of saying this is that gay people are attracted to sames, not opposites. There is an understanding and resonance between men and men and women and women. Between men and women, there is difference. Vive la différence, they say. Friction, frism. The battle of the sexes makes the world go round. Those to whom difference is fundamental to reality naturally see duality and polarity everywhere. The knowledge of good and evil. And opposite poles are perceived to be mutually exclusive and repulsive. Most of the adversarial, competitive quality of human life, I think, arises from this heterosexual point of view, in which you see the world divided. And it's lovely that this goes on, but it is also what creates all the strife. Oh yes, here I go. Okay. Free your mind and the rest will follow. Remember that from disco days? That was a song. This transformation and name changing, identity changing, can also be seen as a transformation of the world, from one of duality, conflict, and competition to one of oneness, harmony, and cooperation. That's sort of the gay dream, isn't it? That we'll all get along together. The gay dream, actually, I always thought, was that everybody in the bar would take off their clothes and everybody would have sex with everybody, and we wouldn't go through all the hassle of having to judge. This was the dream. It never happened, although at the bath sometimes it did. These are New Age, 21st century values that everybody is coming to honor. And they transcend the hetero-homo dichotomy that Hay was emphasizing back in the 50s. There's a way in which this emphasis on we are so different from straight people now would be looked on as a little passé. What Hay really, and it's not entirely true that we relate as subject to subject. What Hay really might have been referring to is the difference in relationship style between men and women. It's women who relate subject to subject, sister to sister. It's men who relate to others as sex objects, competitors, or objects of derision. Because homosexual men likely or potentially have more womanliness, we are more able to also relate sister to sister and lover to lover. The reality is gay men relate to each other wonderfully when we aren't in the sexual context. When you're out in the bar cruising, we tend to be terribly cruel to one another. But when we're organizing a dinner party or a dance, we are so cooperative and work together so well. But the sex gets in the way. And unfortunately, because so many of us see only from the sexual perspective, it looks like gay people cannot get along with each other. And there is... Well, the implication of Hay's valorization of subject-subject relating is that all gay, queer, I keep kicking your foot, I'm sorry, and gender-varying people have to make an effort to understand each other and not treat each other as objects. Men especially must be vigilant about not treating other men as sex objects. Well, there's an alternate reality which we go into. Heroes bravely go where no man has gone before, being brave and doing what must be done when it must be done. That's what the hero has come for. The hero enters a new reality with a new name. He or she or Z discovers a new history. It turns out there has been a whole gay history that has been hidden, and a whole world of gay, trans, lesbian reality, gay, queer culture, and a whole world of gay literature and mythology. Sex and gender variant people have created new worlds in fiction and fantasy, sci-fi especially. One of my novels is a science fiction novel. There were, Kip and I ran the gay and lesbian bookstore in Austin. There was that period during which the rise of gay genre literature was so important. Now it's over Amazon. There's lots more. There are even more novels now, but they're harder to find because, they're not all collected in the same bookstore. I mentioned Andrew Raymer particularly. He was one of the first to kind of create a prehistory in this book, Two Flutes Playing. Are you all familiar with that? Anybody know that? Interesting book, neat idea. As though there really were a prehistory of the people who lived in the trees, and the gay men who were in contact with the life of the trees.